The poem I chose is called Frederick Douglass by Robert Hayden, and it goes like this. When it is finally ours, this freedom, this liberty, this beautiful and terrible thing, needful to a man as air, usable as earth when it belongs to last to all, when it is truly instinct, brain matter, diastole, systole, reflex action, when it is finally one, when it is more than the gaudy mumbo-jumbo of politicians, this man, this Douglass, this former slave, this Negro beaten to his knees, exiled, visioning a world where none is lonely, none haunted, alien, this man, superb in love and logic. This man shall be remembered. Oh, not with statues, rhetoric, not with legends and poems, and wreaths of bronze alone, but with the lives grown out of his life, the lives fleshing his dream of beautiful, needful thing. The poet Robert Hayden is speaking in the poem. He speaks with great respect for former African Americans who struggled for freedom. One person in particular that he references is Frederick Douglass. The poet uses a respectful and formal tone when he references his plan to celebrate freedom and remember his ancestors, who struggled in the same pursuit of it. He wants to remember his fellow African Americans for what they have done, rather than simply have them mentioned in a poem or commemorated by a statue. In the last four lines of the poem, Hayden writes, "Oh, not with statues, rhetoric, not with legends and poems and wreaths of bronze alone, but with the lives grown out of his life, the lives fleshing his dreams of the beautiful, needful thing." Hayden also describes the struggles that past African Americans like Frederick Douglass faced in their attempt at securing freedom for themselves and their families. The poem was written in 1966 during the end of the Civil Rights Movement, which explains why Hayden states that freedom still has not been attained. Segregation in schools had only been outlawed a mere 12 years before the poem had been published due to the infamous Brown versus the School Board of Topeka, Kansas case. The purpose of the poem is to describe the feeling of when freedom is finally secured for African Americans after their struggle for freedom. Hayden uses multiple metaphors throughout the poem to describe freedom. In the first two lines of the poem, Hayden compares freedom to a beautiful and terrible thing, needful to a man as air. Hayden's use of metaphor to compare freedom to air symbolizes the importance of freedom for everyone, because without air, everyone would simply die. The poem has little structure, with only one long ongoing stanza that has no rhyme scheme or particular order. I found the poem very sad and also very informative. The poem describes how even though the slaves were freed, African Americans still don't experience the same freedom that white Americans do. Most of Hayden's poems are about his beliefs and are about the history of slavery and freedom of African Americans. This poem's theme is typical to Hayden's style of writing. Robert Hayden was born named Asa Bundy Sheafy. He was born into a poor household. His parents got separated, which led Hayden to live with a new family in foster care. Even after foster care, he was still living in poverty in a Detroit ghetto. He would also read as an escape for all the traumatic events that would happen where he lived. He also joined the Baha'i faith, which is a religion. This was another huge development in his career. His beliefs influenced much of his work. Hayden's influences include Eleanor Wiley, Countee Cullen, Paul Dunbar, and Winston Auden. I chose this poet because in our class we haven't really read any poems of the poet's past or beliefs. I found this poem interesting because it gives a point of view from an African American on how they view freedom and how people that struggled for freedom will always be remembered and not forgotten.